The slam of the front door echoed the finality of her words. "Well, that's that. So long, everyone. If I have the time, maybe I'll drop by some day." Rachel's gaze swept over the stunned faces of her husband and daughters, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes before hardening again. "I'm sure you'll all manage perfectly well without me. All the best." With a determined set to her jaw, the woman strode out, a large suitcase bumping against her legs, a heavy shoulder bag digging into her arm. Inside, the silence was thick enough to cut with a knife. Eduardo stood frozen, a bewildered slump to his shoulders, while his daughters Lucy and Bella exchanged uneasy glances. A strange mix of relief and unease settled over them. Their mother had never been an easy woman, her temper often flaring like summer lightning, and lately life with her had become a relentless storm. Yet she was their mother, and more acutely they felt a pang of sympathy for their father. He had loved Rachel with a fierce devotion, almost a worship, and her abrupt departure was a brutal blow to his still young heart. Eduardo felt adrift. The familiar shores of his life suddenly vanished beneath a turbulent sea. 17 years she had been the sun and moon of his existence. A raw ache welled in his chest, a primal urge to shatter the silence with a scream, to collapse and never rise again. But then he saw his girls, Lucy and Bella, their young faces etched with a confusion that mirrored his own. He couldn't succumb to his despair, not with them watching. They tried to protect an air of teenage independence, but beneath it he saw the tremor of abandonment. Lucy quietly gathered some scattered clothes Rachel had discarded in her hasty packing, a sigh escaping her lips. "Well, good riddance," she mumbled, more to herself than anyone else. "At least it'll be quiet for once, without all the yelling." She looked at her father, seeking confirmation. "Right, Dad?" "Right," Eduardo echoed, the word a hollow reassurance aimed as much at himself as at his daughters. "But she'll be back." He clung to that fragile hope like a lifeline. Bella, ever the pragmatist, spoke with a surprising firmness. "But if you really want her back, then of course she will. The question is, do we even need her?" Eduardo offered no reply. A mother was always needed, he thought, especially by daughters on the cusp of womanhood, navigating the complexities of their own lives. And he had needed Rachel since the moment their eyes first met across a crowded college hall. They had been so young then, barely more than children themselves. Even in those early days, Eduardo had glimpsed the fiery spirit that resided within his beloved. But it hadn't deterred him. In fact, it had been part of her allure. He was placid, a gentle soul, while she was a whirlwind of passion and emotion. They were two halves of a whole, he reasoned, the calm and the storm, perfectly complementing each other, as any relationship guru would attest. Their journey hadn't been without its bumps. Squabbles and misunderstandings had flared up, but they had always been quickly extinguished, like summer showers on parched earth. Eduardo had learned early on the delicate art of navigating Rachel's tempestuous nature. Yet whispers of caution had followed them. Friends had warned him about hitching his wagon to such a volatile star. Even Rachel's own mother, on the eve of their wedding, had pulled him aside, her eyes filled with a weary resignation. "Ah, Eduardo, my boy," she'd sighed, "what a noose you're putting around your neck. You'll shed tears with my Rachel, mark my words. Even I, her own mother, am relieved to be rid of her." But he hadn't seen anything wrong with his headstrong young bride. He had been certain their life together would be a fairy tale, and in those early days it had been. They had been blissfully happy, Their small rented apartment felt like a palace built on their love. They had both found good jobs, a remarkable feat for two barely 20-year-olds. Young, beautiful and deeply in love, what more could anyone ask for? Those first years of marriage were the envy of their friends. They had savoured the beginning of their independent life, eager to experience everything together. Weekends were filled with hiking trips and picnics with friends, or quiet moments alone under a starlit sky. Arguments had occasionally surfaced, yes, but even those had a playful edge, ending in swift and passionate reconciliations. They built a future in their minds, a future that included not just their own apartment, but children too, a boy and a girl. They chose names, debated when to start their family, eventually settling on a 5-year grace period to enjoy their carefree, joyful life as a duo. But little Lucy had other plans, arriving 3 years after their wedding vows. "My daughter, you're a wonder, a miniature of your mother's beauty, your father's delight, a child born for happiness," Eduardo would murmur, cradling his newborn. It truly was a miracle, to behold this tiny, perfect being, a separate entity who yet mirrored them both. Rachel and Eduardo were starkly different in appearance. She was fair-haired with eyes the colour of a summer sky, while he was dark with warm brown eyes. Lucy had arrived with her mother's fair hair and blue eyes, but with the unmistakable contours of Eduardo's face. While he pointed this out to his wife, a shadow of annoyance would flicker across Rachel's features, initially masked as playful teasing. Eduardo would soothe her. "Come on, our son will be your spitting image." "I doubt I'll ever dare to have a second child," Rachel would retort, a weary edge to her voice. "I have no desire to be some kind of walking incubator, a feeding machine." Eduardo would brush these rude pronouncements aside, attributing them to Rachel's adjustment to her new role. She was tired, that was all. In a few years she would yearn for another little one, but the second arrived almost exactly a year after Lucy's birth. Bella, another daughter. An unexpected, unplanned surprise. Rachel had discovered her pregnancy with a sense of weary resignation. Without much deliberation, she had initially decided to terminate it, not even considering Eduardo's potential objections. "Have you lost your mind?" Eduardo had exploded. "What do you mean? To terminate it? This is our child, our son." A fierce argument had erupted, filled with tears, desperate pleas, and a fragile reconciliation that ultimately allowed the beautiful Bella to enter the world. But something in Rachel seemed to wither. She didn't greet her second daughter with the same radiant joy that had accompanied Lucy's arrival. "Well, there you have it, Eduardo," she had said with a sigh, gesturing to the dark-haired, tiny infant. "Daughter again, and this time definitely your spitting image. Dark hair, a squeaky cry." "When have I ever squeaked?" Eduardo had chuckled, gazing at the baby's furrowed brow. "Look at that. She scowls just like you." "All right, it's enough pampering them," Rachel had snapped, a raw edge to her voice. "Go on, wash the dishes. I'm exhausted." "It's all right for you. At least you see people at work. I'm stuck here all day with these little screamers. You come home, make a few cooing noises, and then go to sleep." But it wasn't entirely true. Eduardo found himself working not just for 2, but for 3. Every extra hour, every ounce of effort was poured into chasing even the smallest rays, and his contribution at home was far more than just baby talk. He was the constant of their companion on daily walks, the one who dedicated his weekends to household chores, grocery runs, and the joyful chaos of playtime. All this a silent offering to his beloved Rachel, hoping to grant her a precious hour or 2 of respite from the relentless demands of motherhood. Their own couple time, however, had become a distant memory. As the girls grew, entering the world of kindergarten, Rachel returned to work. A change that brought a sliver of relief, though not nearly enough. Financial pressures still loomed, and other challenges cast their shadows. But where these difficulties seemed to forge resilience in Eduardo, teaching him to be resourceful and seek practical solutions, they only served to ignite a burning resentment within Rachel, fueling her need to find someone to blame. It wasn't that Eduardo was blind to the imperfections in their family life. He noticed everything, of course. But his concerns were primarily about the woman he loved. For Rachel, she was becoming increasingly irritable, her words sharper, her demeanour coarser with each passing day. "Dad, why is Mum so angry?" Lucy and Bella would sometimes ask, their small faces clouded with worry. "She's not angry, just stressed," he would reply, his voice gentle. "She's exhausted with so much work and so many worries. We need to be kinder to her, help her more, and then she'll be happy and sweet again." "But you work too, Dad, and you help her, and we help. But she's always unhappy, no matter what we do. Bella and I cleaned the kitchen so nicely yesterday, and she still yelled at us for putting the spoons in the wrong place and using the wrong cutting board. We tried so hard. We thought she'd be pleased." Eduardo would offer a hopeful explanation. "I'm sure she was thrilled and grateful. Maybe someone else upset her, at work or on the street. That's why she lost her temper. You just keep being sweet to her, or she might think you don't love her very much." But no matter how diligently the girls tried to shower their mother with affection and care, pleasing Rachel seemed an impossible task. Even a simple hug or kiss could be met with a sharp rebuff. "Why are you clinging to me? What did you do wrong that you're trying to butter me up now?" After a few such dismissals, the daughters grew wary of physical affection towards their mother. They even hesitated to show their love for their father in her presence, sensing it might make her angry. Each day was a tentative step across a minefield. There was no predicting what innocuous action might trigger her bitterness, and with each passing day, their family life increasingly resembled a descent into a dark and suffocating abyss. Perhaps Rachel had once held back her frustrations, but now the dam had burst. An endless torrent of yelling and insults rained down on her husband and daughters. Eduardo would try to reason with her. "Rachel, remember how much you suffered from the discord in your own family, from your mother's temper. Do you want our girls to live like that?" But her response was often dismissive, laced with a bitter resentment. "Oh, don't even compare! You have no idea what I went through, how much I endured from my own family, and it seems it was all just preparation to endure even more in my own marriage. I told you we shouldn't have had a second child, or at least we should have waited." Then would come the cutting remarks aimed at him. "But no, you sweet-talked me. Thank heavens I didn't have a third, or you'd all be gnawing at me. 4 hungry mouths to feed. I'm sick of it all. I want to leave you all, run away to the ends of the earth." Eduardo knew deep down that she wouldn't actually leave, though her threats always left a knot of fear in his stomach. He did everything he could to ease her burden, even occasionally sending her on solo vacations, carefully choosing the destination and paying for everything himself. "Go and rest from us," he would say, his voice laced with a hopeful tenderness. "Heal your nerves. Just come back soon. We'll be waiting for you." She would depart readily enough, but she always returned with the same litany of complaints and accusations. The girls grew older and increasingly distant from their mother. It was during one of the scandals that the topic of divorce first surfaced. Eduardo hadn't truly believed it was a real possibility, so he wasn't particularly frightened. After some contemplation, he even considered it might be a viable option. Perhaps they wouldn't divorce, but simply separate for a while. The girls would stay with him, of course, and Rachel, living alone and realising what she stood to lose, would come to her senses and reconsider her behaviour. And during their next heated exchange, the words were his. "Yes, Rachel, you're right. Maybe it would be better if we separated." "Did you think I'd be scared?" he had replied, her voice surprisingly flat. "All three of you have been getting on my nerves for ages." And with that, she had taken matters into her own hands, filing for divorce and announcing her decision to the family at dinner. Lucy and Bella had merely exchanged a look before returning to their plates, and Eduardo had simply shrugged. Father and daughters hadn't taken her words seriously. Rachel had often spoken of wanting to leave, to escape to the ends of the earth and start a new happy life. They assumed this was just another one of her dramatic pronouncements, destined to come to nothing. This time, however, their mother was resolute. The divorce was finalised. Eduardo had clung to the hope until the very last moment that Rachel was playing some kind of game, that it was all a charade, a fictitious divorce designed to somehow improve their lives. He had even dared to believe that the official separation might somehow positively influence Rachel's attitude. "After the official paperwork is done, we won't be husband and wife any more," he had reasoned. "Maybe that will change how she feels." It did change things, but not in the way he had hoped. Returning home after their divorce, Rachel immediately began packing her belongings. "And where do you think you're going?" Eduardo had asked his now ex-wife, still unable to fully grasp the reality of the situation. "That's none of your business anymore," she had replied with her usual cold composure. "You're nothing to me now, and I'm a free woman, a single woman, by the way, who needs to sort out her personal life, not bicker with the likes of you." "So you're just leaving the girls?" Eduardo had asked, his voice barely a whisper of disbelief. "Would they even come with me? You did your job, turned them against me, raised them in your own image, and now what? And now, my dear ex-husband," she had said, her eyes glinting with a chilling satisfaction, "you can sit here with your precious little darlings and enjoy what you've achieved." "Rachel, please, think about this. They're our daughters, our children. How will they manage without their mother?" Eduardo had pleaded, his voice thick with desperation. "What children? Where are these children? They're two hulking mares who will probably be bringing home their own little surprises any day now. 15 and 16, let me remind you. It's time they learned to stand on their own 2 feet. Now, get out of my way and let me pack in peace. And you should be thanking me that I'm not demanding half of the jointly acquired property or insisting on splitting the apartment. Now I'll have everything. A better home, a normal family, and a husband who isn't spineless, a real man. Got it?" "So you're leaving me for someone else?" A cold dread snaked down Eduardo's spine, his legs feeling weak. This was far worse than he could have ever imagined. She had laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "Yes, to someone else, but it's none of your concern any more. Did you think I was old, ugly and unwanted? And a crazy psycho to boot? Well, take that and choke on it." With a final, decisive shove, Rachel propelled Eduardo, statue still with disbelief, out of the bedroom. The click of the lock echoed the shutting of the door on 17 years of shared life. This scene almost complete when their daughters appeared. Eduardo turned to them, his voice a raw whisper of desperation. "Girls, Mum's leaving. You have to do something. She won't listen to me. Please, tell her not to go. Tell her we need her, that we love her." His plea hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fears. Lucy and Bella exchanged a look, a silent language passing between sisters who had weathered many of their mother's storms. A collective sigh escaped their lips, a sound that spoke of years spent treading carefully. Lucy, the elder, asked without too much desire in her voice, "Mum, are you really doing this?" Rachel's gaze, sharp and unwavering, met her daughter's. "Does this feel like a game to you, Lucy?" "Honestly, just leave me be. Let me finally have some peace. How many years have I poured into you two? How many precious nerves have you frayed?" Bella, Lucy's younger sister's eyes brimming with unshed tears, echoed the unspoken question. "And you won't ever come back?" A brittle laugh escaped Rachel's lips, a sound devoid of warmth. "I'd have to be a complete fool to return to you and your dear father. There, I believe that's everything." She gestured dismissively towards a small pile of discarded clothes. "Whatever's left, you and Bella can share. I won't miss it. I'll acquire new things." "Mummy," Bella whispered, maybe you could stay?" Rachel's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something akin to triumph in their depths. "Oh, suddenly it's Mummy, is it? You haven't called me that in ages. Now please, get out of my way. The taxi is waiting downstairs. Don't make me call for help." Lucy's voice, though trembling slightly, held a note of profound understanding. "Do you even realise that after you walk out that door, you can't just come back?" "I am eager to experience this," Rachel stated, her voice cold and resolute. "Well, enough with the tearful farewells. No need for kisses. My makeup is freshly done." And so the house fell silent, the echo of the slammed front door reverberating through the suddenly spacious rooms. The family was a fractured thing, a ship without its captain. Slowly, tentatively, the sisters began to navigate this new landscape. They invited friends over and discovered a competence in managing the household, a quiet pride in their ability to create order, and even a semblance of warmth in their suddenly motherless home. Their apartment became tidier, the meals they prepared together surprisingly delicious. Lucy and Bella found an unexpected sense of purpose in their new roles, delighting in trying new recipes, setting the table with care each evening, and pouring all their youthful energy into comforting their father. They saw his quiet sorrow, the way his gaze would often drift to the empty chair at the dinner table, a silent testament to his enduring love for the woman who was no longer there. Eduardo was indeed lost, adrift in a sea of memories. He would replay their life together in his mind, like a chess player meticulously analysing a lost game, searching for the fatal move, the moment everything had begun to unravel. Could he have changed anything before it was too late? And yet a stubborn ember of hope still flickered within him. Each evening he would listen intently to the sounds of the building, his heart leaping at the creak of the stairs, the shrill ring of the telephone. A silent prayer echoed in his soul. "Rachel, please come home." But she remained a phantom, a ghost in the corners of their shared past. Eduardo, consumed by a gnawing loneliness, would drive past her workplace at dusk, hoping for a fleeting glimpse, a chance to speak. But she never emerged. In a moment of utter desperation, he even called his former mother-in-law, clinging to the fragile hope that she might possess some clue to Rachel's new life. "Haven't seen or heard from that girl in ages, and frankly, I don't want to. So, she finally ran off and left you and the girls? Well, good riddance. I told you'd have nothing but trouble with her." "Yes," Eduardo murmured into the phone, his voice heavy with a weary resignation. "I did. And now, no matter where she goes, no matter who she's with, she's still mine." A hopeless declaration whispered into the void. But his daughters, in a twist of fate, had a chance encounter with their mother, a trip to the supermarket, a mundane task that suddenly held a sharp, unexpected edge. They saw her emerged from the store looking impossibly chic and self-assured in a stylish pantsuit, gliding towards a gleaming SUV. The windows were darkly tinted, obscuring the driver's face. Their mother didn't notice them, or perhaps chose not to. Bella had instinctively started to call out, but Lucy had gripped her arm, pulling her back with a surprising force. "Don't," she had said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. "Let her live her life the way she wants." A shadow of something akin to anger flickered in her eyes. "And we're not telling Dad we saw her, or maybe we should, so he finally understands there's no one left to wait for. This man she's with now, he'll leave her eventually. Then what will she have? Nothing. She'll come crawling back to us." A bitter certainty laced her words. "And Dad will forgive her, you'll see. He won't be able to live without her. You know what I hate most about my own looks? How much I'm starting to look like her. I'm buying a darker hair dye today." A rebellious spark ignited in her eyes. "I don't want her hair." Time continued its relentless flow. The girls grew more accustomed to the quiet rhythm of their motherless home. They had, in their own way, found a fragile equilibrium, but Eduardo's longing remained a constant companion, a shadow that stretched long in the evenings. At 39, he considered his romantic life a closed chapter, a book sealed shut. And this quiet resignation began to worry his daughters. "You know, Bella," Lucy had said one evening, a thoughtful frown creasing her brow, "it scares me to think about Dad. When we both get married, he'll be all alone." "And who exactly are you planning on marrying?" Bella had teased, nudging her sister with her elbow. "Oh, you know, that guy who walked me home the other day." Lucy's cheeks flushed a delicate pink. "Who was that?" Bella had pressed, her curiosity piqued. "Oh, never mind." Lucy had waved her hand dismissively. "No one. Neither of us is getting married any time soon." "But some day it will happen," Bella had mused, her gaze distant. "I don't know if he's still waiting for Mum, or if this is just how he is now. We need to let him know that we wouldn't mind if he, found someone else." Lucy had nodded in agreement, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Maybe he doesn't want to upset us. Thinks we're still secretly hoping Mum will come back, or that we wouldn't want him to remarry. I don't know. Should we try to hint at it somehow?" "How?" Bella had pondered, tapping a finger against her chin. "You know, one of the girls in our class, her mum is divorced too, and she's really nice. I go to their house a lot, and I really like her." "But how could we even introduce them?" Lucy had asked, a practical concern in her voice. "No, he should just meet someone on his own. But we may hint to him." And so the girls had begun their campaign, starting with subtle hints, gradually becoming more direct in their attempts to assure their father that they would welcome him finding happiness again. Eduardo had simply chuckled in response, a fond amusement in his eyes. But when Bella began to enthusiastically extol the virtues of her classmate's kind and vibrant mother, he had finally spoken with a quiet, unwavering certainty. "No, girls," he had said gently, his gaze filled with a deep and abiding love. "It won't work like that. I'm a one-woman man, you see. I still love your mother." A sad smile touched his lips. "Let's say another woman did come into my life. Would that be fair to her? To live with me while my heart still holds a space for your mum? It would be hurtful for her and dishonest of me. And what if Rachel did ever decide to come back? Would I just chase away my new wife? No, my dears." So nothing in Eduardo's life had changed, and his daughters, finally understanding the unyielding nature of their father's love, had quietly resigned themselves to his enduring devotion. They had their own paths to forge, their own stories to write. First, the elder, and then a year later the younger, had graduated from high school and embarked on their university journeys. They rarely spoke of their mother, at least not aloud, and she in turn had remained a silent figure in their past, never once reaching out. Their graduation balls had passed without her presence, their 18th birthdays celebrated in her absence. She hadn't been there to share their triumphs or to offer comfort in their inevitable stumbles. 3 years drifted by, and Lucy announced her engagement. Eduardo knew the young man who had captured his daughter's heart, a decent soul from a good family. "Sweetheart," he said to Lucy, his voice tinged with a wistful hope, "we should invite your mother. A wedding, it feels incomplete without a mother's blessing, doesn't it? Your mother and me, we never had that. Perhaps that's why—" He trailed off, the unspoken pain of their broken vows hanging in the air. "Would you call her?" The idea of inviting her mother to the wedding landed on Lucy like a hesitant snowflake, beautiful in its potential, yet carrying the distinct chill of years of neglect. Yet a tiny seed of hope, stubbornly refusing to be extinguished, began to sprout in the parched soil of Lucy's heart. Perhaps, she mused, gazing out the window at the soft afternoon light filtering through the curtains, perhaps life has smoothed the sharp edges of her bitterness. Maybe finding whatever it was she sought has finally brought her a measure of peace. And the silence, perhaps it was born not of malice but of a painful shame. Life has a way of humbling even the proudest of hearts. With a hand that felt strangely disconnected from her own will, Lucy punched in the familiar digits. Yet a secret wish resided in the quiet corners of her soul that the line would be dead, the number reassigned, a stranger's voice, a welcome buffer against the anticipated coldness. But fate, with its penchant for bittersweet irony, had other plans. Rachel's voice, cool and distant as a winter breeze, answered on the third ring. "Hello, Mum, it's Lucy." The words felt foreign, a forgotten language on her tongue. "Ah, hello," Rachel replied, the tone utterly devoid of the warmth a mother's voice should hold. "It's been a while. How are things with you?" Not a single note of joy, not even a hint of polite surprise, coloured her voice. Just a flat, echoing indifference that sent a shiver down Lucy's spine. Swallowing the lump that had formed in her throat, Lucy continued, "Everything's fine. I'm getting married. I'm calling to invite you to the wedding. We'd really love for you to be there. The ceremony is at 2. A beat of silence stretched between them. Then Rachel's voice, still as level and detached as before, offered a perfunctory reply. "All right. Thank you for calling, for inviting me." A series of short, clipped beeps followed, the abrupt severing of the connection mirroring the abrupt severing of their familial bond years ago. Lucy hung up. So much for a heartfelt blessing, she thought. A wave of disappointment, sharp and familiar, washing over her. No congratulations, not even a polite well-wish. I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't even bother to show up. What was I even hoping for? A miracle? Yet despite the crushing weight of her mother's indifference, a tiny, stubborn part of Lucy couldn't help but wait for her at the wedding day. She was both longing for and dreading the appearance of this woman, who was her mother, yet felt like a stranger walking in from a long-forgotten dream. And Eduardo, his hope, a quiet ember that had stubbornly refused to be extinguished over the years, flickered with renewed intensity. Rachel won't miss her little girl's wedding, he told himself, the conviction a fragile shield against the years of silence. She'll come. She has to. His gaze would often drift towards the doorway, a silent hope amidst the joyous celebration. The guests, sensing his undercurrent of unspoken emotion, exchanged sympathetic glances. Poor Eduardo, he's so emotional today, so clearly nervous. He almost broke down during his toast. He loves his daughter so much, it must hurt him to see her start her own life. And yes, Eduardo felt the bittersweet pang of his daughter embarking on her own journey, but beneath that paternal sentiment lay a deeper, more insistent yearning, the desperate, almost foolish hope for a glimpse of the woman who still held a piece of his heart. But the hours ticked by, marked by the clinking of glasses and the murmur of happy chatter, and the door remained empty. Rachel did not appear, did not call. That night, after the last guest had departed and the echoes of laughter had faded into the quiet stillness of his home, Eduardo did something he hadn't allowed himself in years. He wept, loudly and hopelessly, not hiding his feelings from Bella. The girls, seeing this, felt a sharp surge of resentment towards the woman who had cast such a long shadow over their lives. If only Lucy had simply told him the truth, that Rachel had dismissed her invitation with such cold indifference, Bella thought, then Dad wouldn't have spent the entire day with that hopeful yet ultimately heartbroken look in his eyes. Maybe he would have even noticed some of the other women at the wedding. There was that lovely single relative of the groom. Her eyes held such kindness. Why didn't he strike up a conversation? And now, my Craig will be home from the army soon. He's sure to propose. And how can I leave Dad all alone, with only the ghosts of his past for company? The unspoken question hung heavy in the air. A year later, as Bella began planning her own wedding, her father's gentle suggestion to invite their mother was met with a firm refusal. "No, Dad," she had stated, the memory of Lucy's experience still sharp. "Absolutely not." A bitter laugh touched her lips. Lucy reached out, and what did she get? A cold dismissal. "I won't subject myself to the same." Though, if she did, it would only be to cause chaos, to taint my happiness, to hurt Lucy. She couldn't be bothered for Lucy's special day. Why would mine be any different? And knowing her, she'd probably bring him along. Bella knew about him. The details, stark and unflattering, gleamed from their grandmother. Rachel's mother, a woman weathered by life's storms, offered a stark portrayal of her daughter's new life, a younger man with dangerous ties, a volatile existence far removed from their own quiet world. "Don't wait for her," her grandmother had advised, her voice weary. "She's living a life she chose, and it wasn't with you or your father." Despite all these circumstances, Eduardo, however, still cast longing glances at the door on Bella's wedding day, a silent hope flickering in his eyes again. The sisters, now wives themselves, found their concern shifting solely to their father's quiet solitude. "Dad," Bella sighed during a visit, "it's been years. You deserve happiness." She moved on, seemingly without a second thought. Lucy added gently, "Maybe it's time you did too." Eduardo's reply was always the same, a gentle weariness in his voice. "I'm content, girls, and it's rather amusing to be lectured on marriage by my married daughters." "It's not about that," Bella clarified. "We worry that if Mum ever returned, you'd take her back, and that would only hurt you more." "Don't speak ill of your mother," Eduardo would say softly. "We don't know everything." "But we know enough, Dad," Bella countered, a hint of her old frustration returning. "She left us too, and her own mother. By the way, Granny is also alone. Maybe you should move in with her, Dad. You could look after each other. It might be less lonely for both of you." Eduardo had offered a wry smile. Well, thank you for the suggestion, my dear. He'd then steered the conversation to lighter topics. Tell me about your lives, girls. Everything all right? Any little ones on the way to brighten my days? Another year unfolded, marked by the gentle rhythm of their separate lives. The daughters were content in their marriages, motherhood a future joy, not a present rush. From Rachel, the silence remained unbroken. Eduardo, it seemed, had finally accepted the quiet companionship of his own company, sharing no intimations of change. Then, one ordinary afternoon, his voice on the phone held a note of unexpected warmth. "My dears," he said, a hint of excitement colouring his tone, "clear your schedules for the coming weekend. I have someone I want you to meet, someone very special. I have a good feeling about this." Lucy and Bella, after their father's call, had exchanged excited hopes over the phone. Their shared anticipation hung in the air. A woman! It seemed their father was finally stepping out of the shadows of the past. It seemed their father was finally ready for a new chapter. A quiet joy bloomed in the sisters' hearts. Surely, after all this time, he had found someone truly special. Their meeting with Sophie confirmed their hopes. A woman of gentle grace, with kind eyes and a warm smile, she radiated a quiet strength and a focus on family that was the very opposite of Rachel's volatile energy. The daughters allowed themselves a sigh of relief. "She seems wonderful, Bella," Lucy had mused later, a thoughtful crease in her brow. "Almost too perfect." Sophie's reputation was impeccable. She held a stable job, was financially secure, and her previous marriage had ended years ago. She had raised her son alone, and he was now a grown man living in another city. She even owned a comfortable apartment in a good neighbourhood. "Well," Lucy had declared to Bella, a lightness in her voice, "I think we can finally relax. Our dad is in good hands." Soon, Eduardo and Sophie began to build a life together. Sharing his happiness, Eduardo told his daughters, "I never knew life could feel so peaceful. I only wish we had met sooner. Sophie is a true gift." Their days were filled with simple joys, walks in the park, shared laughter at movies, evenings spent in comfortable companionship. Family dinners became a regular occurrence. The daughters and their husbands welcomed into their warm circle, eventually joined by Sophie's son and his girlfriend. One quiet evening, as Eduardo and Sophie watched television, a sharp ring shattered the peaceful atmosphere. "Stay here, my dear," Eduardo said, rising to answer the door. "Probably just the neighbour with his drill." But a moment later, a soft cry, followed by a sickening thud, echoed through the apartment. Sophie's heart lurched with fear. She found Eduardo on the floor, clutching his chest, a strange woman hovering over him. "Eduardo!" Sophie cried, her voice filled with terror. "Who are you? What did you do to him?" But instead of answering, the woman rushed away. She turned out to be Rachel. For the man who had carried her memory for nearly 7 years, her sudden reappearance was almost a fatal blow. Eduardo suffered a massive heart attack. The ambulance, the hospital, the calls to their daughters, it was all like a terrible dream for Sophie. Lucy and Bella rushed over almost at the same time, but they weren't allowed into their father's ward. The attack had been very serious. Eduardo was unconscious but stable, so all 3 of them went home. As they reached the building, a figure stood in the dim entryway. It was Rachel. She had come back, perhaps seeking answers, perhaps driven by a morbid curiosity. Finding the apartment empty, she had waited. "My darlings!" she exclaimed, her voice a strained mix of remorse and forced affection, her arms outstretched. "My beautiful girls, how I've missed you! I'm so glad to see you. What happened to your father? Oh, he frightened me so. And who is this? Her gaze fell on Sophie, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. What do you want? Why are you here? Lucy demanded, her voice cold, her eyes filled with a deep revulsion as she looked at the woman who was barely recognizable as the vibrant, sharp-tongued mother of their past, or even the aloof beauty who had once driven away in a tinted SUV. Life has certainly worn you down, both daughters thought, observing the harsh lines etched on Rachel's face. What do you mean, why? What is it, Lucy? I came to see you, to see Dad. Why now? You're a little late for visits, aren't you? Bella retorted sharply, her voice laced with barely suppressed anger. You almost killed him. If only you knew what I myself have had to endure, Rachel exclaimed, tears welling in her eyes as they stood just outside the apartment door. Let me come in and tell you, though not in front of her. Is that his new woman? She cast a disdainful glance towards Sophie. Not just his woman, but his wife, Lucy corrected, gently but firmly holding back Sophie, who had started to move away. We have no secrets from her. Speak in front of her or leave. Sophie and Eduardo hadn't yet formalized their relationship with papers, but their commitment was clear. Reassured by Lucy's words, Sophie settled into her chair, though she avoided looking directly at Rachel. She sighed deeply, a sound filled with genuine sorrow. The truth is, my dears, I really don't have anywhere else to go. Life hasn't been kind. That man I left for, we never actually married. And then, then he was arrested, put away. The apartment was confiscated. Where was I supposed to go? I had some savings, some jewellery, bits and pieces. Her voice trailed off, a hint of vulnerability creeping in. I found work for a while, rented a small place, but then the money ran out and I lost my job. I was staying with friends, but how long can you impose? I went to my mother, but she's not well any more. Her mind, it's gone. She wouldn't even recognise me. Honestly, girls, she scares me now. So I came to Eduardo. Maybe he'd let me stay for a while, just until I get back on my feet. The audacity! Bella almost spat the words out. You trample on him, you drive him to a heart attack, and then you come crawling back for help. You are not needed here by anyone. Almost 7 years of silence, not even a phone call, Lucy added, her voice trembling with indignation. And now you expect us to take you in? Get out! No one here wants you. Their voices rose in unison, a chorus of years of hurt and resentment. Well, well, Rachel sneered, her gaze flickering dismissively towards Sophie. Look at you two defending the little home wrecker instead of your mum. This is his wife, and you are nothing here. Go wherever you came from, Bella said icily. Suddenly, Rachel straightened, the mask of the repentant sinner fading away. Fine, she said, her voice hardening. I'll leave, but I'll wait until Eduardo comes back. He'll decide who his wife is and who the unwanted guest is. He loved me his whole life, and he still does. He won't turn me away. You'll see. Just try to come near him again and I'll destroy you, Lucy hissed, her eyes blazing with fury. Rachel merely smirked. We'll see who destroys whom, she retorted, before turning and walking away. Only then did the sisters truly notice Sophie, pale and trembling in her armchair. Girls, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Maybe I should go to my place for now. When Eduardo returns, he can decide what he wants. Absolutely not, Bella declared, her voice firm. If that viper slithers back in here, we'll never get rid of her. You stay here, Sophie. You wait for Dad. When he comes home, everything will go back to how it was. I know Dad loves you. He'll want you here." The next morning, Lucy and Bella arrived at the hospital early, just in time to witness a furious commotion in the reception area. Rachel was creating a scene, demanding to see her husband. "You have no right to keep me away. I'm his wife. That divorce was a sham. You'll see, the moment he sees me, he'll get better," she shrieked, her voice echoing through the tense waiting room. "And there is a snake in his apartment. His own daughters are helping her." Realizing they couldn't reason with the raging woman, the hospital staff called the police. The officers arrived quickly, and it turned out they had been looking for Rachel for some time. As they led her away, Rachel caught sight of her daughters. "Well, Lucy, thank you," she spat, her eyes filled with venom. "Thank you, Bella. You turned your own mother out, sent her to jail. Just wait. I'll be back, and you'll both regret this." What they would regret, the daughters didn't hear. The hospital staff finally allowed them to see their father. "Hello, Dad. How are you feeling?" Hearing their voices, Eduardo turned from the window, a ghost of a smile touching his pale lips. "My darlings, how wonderful to see you. I'm feeling better, truly. I think they'll release me soon. I can almost get up now." He glanced around, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "Where's Sophie? Didn't she come?" "Lie still, please, Dad," Lucy gently urged, pressing his hand back onto the crisp white sheets. "Sophie will be here later. She had to stop by work, drop something off and ask for some time off. You scared us terribly, you know." "I was scared myself," Eduardo admitted, a furrow in his brow. "1 minute I was nothing. Then I woke up in this bed. I don't remember anything. Thought maybe it was a car accident or something. You know, while I was out, Rachel, your mother, she came to see me." "For real or in a dream?" Bella asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. Eduardo frowned, clearly still piecing things together. "I don't know. A dream, a hallucination, what do you call it? But it felt so real, like she was actually back." He paused, a thoughtful expression on his face. "And you know what? I felt nothing. No joy, no sadness, no anger. I surprised myself. I think I finally understood. I don't need her anymore. I couldn't accept her back, even if she really did come back." "Thank goodness," Bella exclaimed, squeezing his hand. "So you're finally over her? The spell is broken?" Eduardo smiled, a genuine smile this time. "You said it perfectly. A spell. All these years, I think I wasn't in love with her, but with the memory of her. That young, vibrant, slightly reckless but so vulnerable girl. Then she grew this shell. And under that shell, there was nothing left of the Rachel I once knew." He sighed softly. "Besides, living with Sophie, it showed me that relationships can be different from what I had with your mother. They can be good, mature, built on mutual respect, understanding, a genuine desire to make the other person happy. You understand, I'm sure." "We understand perfectly," Lucy said, her voice filled with warmth. "And we're so happy you're finally free from this illness called Rachel." Eduardo chuckled weakly. "Oh, maybe you shouldn't have said all that. She is your mother, after all." "Do we even remember her as a mother?" Bella countered, a hint of sadness in her voice. "Was she ever really there for us? We've had our own healing to do." "Well," Lucy added, a wry smile touching her lips, "at least we know exactly how not to behave in a marriage now." The sisters shared a small laugh. Just then Sophie entered the room, her eyes filled with worry, sympathy, and a deep love for Eduardo. "All right, Dad," Lucy said, smiling gently. We should let you rest. We have things to do." "Yes, Sophie," Bella added, a playful glint in her eyes. "We're entrusting you with our most precious treasure." "Get well soon, Dad," Lucy said, her voice filled with affection. "You have so much good ahead of you. Life is just beginning. No time to be sick." As the daughters left the room, walking slowly towards the exit, a quiet sense of peace settled over them. Everyone in their family, it seemed, had finally found their own measure of happiness. Everyone except Rachel. Lucy, pointedly avoiding the word mother, felt that Rachel had reaped what she had sown. She, too, could have chosen happiness, and as the sisters went to their families, they carried with them a quiet confidence in their own ability to protect the happiness they had found.